The heart monitor beeped slower and slower. I was sitting by her bedside holding her hand, his mother's hand, whispering the same words over and over like a prayer. "You're not alone. I'm here. I'm right here." Her skin was cool, but I could still feel the faint squeeze of her fingers, like she knew I was there. I'd been by her side for days. Her son, my husband, hadn't shown up once. The nurse entered softly, gave me a sad nod, then hesitated. "Are you Mrs. Callahan?" she asked gently. "Yes," I said, not looking up. She paused. "You might want to check your phone." My stomach twisted. I pulled it out and opened it, expecting maybe a message, some update, anything. Instead, it was a post. A damn Instagram post. My husband's smiling face, standing in front of a new apartment with some blonde woman clinging to his arm. The caption read, "Sometimes love fades. Grateful to start this new chapter, officially divorced and moving forward." My name wasn't even mentioned. I stared at it, blinking, my pulse louder than the machines around me. I refreshed the screen. It was real. Over 700 likes in the first hour. Comments congratulating him. I looked at his mother, still clinging to life, still waiting for her son. And I realized right then, I wasn't just losing a marriage. I was losing the illusion that he'd ever cared. He divorced me publicly while I held his dying mother's hand. And he thought I'd just walk away quietly. He had no idea who I really was. I didn't cry. Not right away. I sat there, holding her hand, still warm, while my phone burned in my lap like it had betrayed me too. I couldn't look away from the screen. Every few seconds, another notification. Likes, comments. "Good for you, man." Finally. "She wasn't right for you anyway." They didn't know the timing. That while he was posting photos, I was whispering goodbye to the only person in that family who had ever treated me like I mattered. His mother had loved me. Truly. She used to call me her daughter, even before we were married. When she got sick, it was me who took her to appointments. Me who managed her meds. Me who rearranged my life to make sure she was never alone during chemo or surgeries, or that long stretch of nights where the pain made her delirious. And where was he? Gone. Busy. Always something more important. I made excuses for him, told her he was just overwhelmed, but I knew. He didn't want to see her like that. He didn't want to feel anything. He pulled back more each day. Late nights, cold silence, excuses that didn't even try to make sense. I'd ask him where he was going, and he'd just shrug. Out. Conversations became chores. Affection dried up. At first, I thought it was grief, stress, maybe burnout from watching his mother fade away. But I found out later, through a mutual friend, that he had started dating someone else. Long before the post. Probably while I was wiping vomit from his mother's chin and holding her through the night because she was scared to die alone. I didn't confront him at first. I wanted to believe it was a rumor, but deep down, I already knew. The way he avoided me, the way he smirked like he had a secret. It wasn't just distance. It was disdain. Then came the lawyers. The email. Cold, sterile. As discussed, we will proceed with the divorce filing as uncontested. We hadn't discussed anything. It was a declaration, not a conversation. And he didn't even send it himself. His lawyer did. I responded asking for time, explained his mother was close to the end, that maybe we could wait until after the funeral. No response. That's when I started realizing this wasn't just a man walking away. This was a man rewriting the story. And I was the villain in his version. I was cold, difficult, the one who never supported him. That's what he told people. He painted me as heartless while I was literally sitting in a hospital chair for 72 hours straight, watching his mother die. I tried to ignore the whispers, but they found me, at the grocery store, in the church hallway after service. I heard he finally left. You know, sometimes people just grow apart. Maybe you were too focused on his mom, not enough on him. As if caring for a dying woman was some kind of emotional betrayal. The worst part? He never said a word to me in person, not even after the post. When he finally showed up, 12 hours after she passed, he walked into the hospital room, looked at her body, and didn't even acknowledge me. Just stood there in awkward silence, like I was some nurse he didn't recognize. And then he left. No hug, no thank you, no apology, nothing. At the funeral, he arrived late, sat in the back row, brought her. The same woman from the photo. She wore black, but it looked like a costume. She didn't speak to anyone, just clung to him like she belonged there. I kept my composure. I greeted every guest, thanked the nurses who came, held it together through the eulogy, the burial, the hugs. But when I got home that night, I collapsed. Right there in the hallway, still wearing my funeral dress, still smelling like the perfume I had worn for her because she used to say it reminded her of lilacs. I stayed on the floor for hours. It wasn't just grief. It was humiliation. It was rage wrapped in sadness, soaked in disbelief. Because I hadn't just lost my mother-in-law. I had lost my marriage, my stability, my dignity, all while trying to do the right thing. And still, I blamed myself. Maybe I should have seen the signs earlier. Maybe I should have fought harder. Maybe I should have yelled, confronted, exploded. But I didn't, because I thought love meant patience, loyalty, silence. Turns out it meant nothing to him. But it meant everything to me, and that's when I knew. He took everything from me. But he made one huge mistake. He thought I'd stay down. The morning after the funeral, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the cold coffee in my cup, feeling like a ghost in my own life. Everything was too quiet. No beeping machines, no pill organizers, no hospice nurse in the hallway. Just silence, and the memory of her last breath still echoing in my chest. I had no idea who I was anymore. Wife? Not really. Widow? Not technically. Caregiver? Not needed. I was just floating until I saw her handwriting. Tucked inside her old cookbook, next to her recipe for chicken pot pie, was a folded piece of paper with my name on it. "For when I'm gone," it said on the front, shaky and faint. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside, a short note. "I know what you've done for me, and I know what he hasn't. You have a good heart. Don't let anyone make you feel small. You were always more than enough. For me, for yourself. Please live." I sat down and wept. The kind of crying that shakes your ribs and leaves you hollow afterward. But underneath that grief was something new, something sharp. Clarity. She saw me, even in her final days. She knew I had stayed when he wouldn't. She knew I was the one who held her up. And him, too. And that note? It didn't just break me. It woke me up. I stopped waiting for apologies that would never come. I stopped rereading the post, stopped checking who had liked it or commented. I started deleting things. Old texts, shared photos, voice memos of him saying nothing that ever really mattered. I didn't need to prove I was the better person anymore. I just needed to stop being his person at all. A week later, I returned the last of his mother's belongings to her sister. I didn't mention the post, didn't mention the girlfriend. Just smiled, handed her the box, and said thank you for sharing her with me. Then I went home and made a list. A real one, not in my head this time. Things I wanted back. My name, my voice, my peace, my damn self. And I started checking them off. I scheduled a consultation with a therapist. I updated my legal documents. I reclaimed my social media. Not with revenge, not with venom, but with truth. I wrote one post. I held her hand until the end. I didn't get to say goodbye to a marriage, but I got to say goodbye to someone who truly loved me. She told me to live, so I'm doing exactly that. I didn't name him, I didn't tag him, I didn't need to. The post spoke for itself. Quiet, powerful, honest. And people noticed. Friends I hadn't heard from in years reached out. Strangers sent messages saying they'd gone through something similar. For every person who once believed his version, 10 more now saw mine. Not because I screamed louder, because I finally stopped hiding. That's when I felt it. Not just anger, not just heartbreak. Power, the quiet, grounded kind. The kind that doesn't need validation, that doesn't tremble or over-explain. The kind that knows what it's worth and refuses to be erased. He didn't expect me to survive. He expected me to fade. But I wasn't fading. I was waking up. And I was just getting started. I started with small victories. The first was the name change. I went down to the courthouse alone, walked in with my old ID, left with paperwork that said I was me again. No hyphen. No trace of his name trailing mine like a chain. Just me. I celebrated that night with cheap champagne and a bubble bath. No toasts, no speeches, just music playing from my phone, candles flickering, and the realization that I was finally living without asking permission. The second victory? Reclaiming my story. He wanted control of the narrative, paint himself as the man who escaped a cold, disconnected marriage. But the truth? The truth was quiet and steady and dangerous for men like him. Because the truth doesn't shout. It simply waits. And then it exposes. I started talking more, sharing little moments online, not for pity, just for power. I posted a photo of the folded letter she'd left me, the handwriting shaky but clear. I captioned it, "Some people wait until after death to be honest. Some never find the courage at all." That post went viral, thousands of shares, hundreds of messages, women, men, strangers thanking me for saying what they couldn't. Suddenly, I wasn't just a woman who got publicly discarded. I was a woman who refused to disappear. And with that came the third victory: clarity. I realized I didn't want to waste time explaining myself to people who already chose their side. I didn't need them to understand. I just needed them to witness. So I got to work. I used everything I had learned from caring for his mother, the doctors, the system, the broken support networks, and built something new. A local platform, then an online service, dedicated to helping caregivers manage life while dealing with death. Practical tools, mental health support, real talk for people drowning in quiet suffering. I named it Last Light. The tagline? Because the one who holds the hand deserves to be held too. The growth was slow but steady. Articles, podcast interviews, donations. Women messaged me saying, "Your story gave me permission to leave." Nurses wrote, "I sent your post to every family I work with." And just like that, I turned his silence into a platform, turned his betrayal into a business. And just when things started to rise, I got the message from an old friend. "Did you see his video?" No, I hadn't. I hadn't checked his page in months. I blocked him after the court finalized everything. Property split, no alimony, no contact. But curiosity got the better of me. I clicked the link. It was him, sitting in a softly lit office, trying to look thoughtful. The caption read, "On healing, regret, and starting over." He spoke directly to the camera, talked about grief, about learning to let go, about being misunderstood. He never said my name, but he didn't have to. He painted himself as the victim of a love that just couldn't survive the darkness, claimed he was coping with the loss of his mother and the end of a marriage all at once. Said he made mistakes, sure, but was trying to be better. It was manipulative, calculated, carefully crafted for sympathy. And it worked, for a while, until someone commented, "Weren't you the guy who posted your divorce while your wife was at the hospital with your dying mom?" And then another, "You moved on before she passed. Sit down." The tide turned quickly. People remembered. Screenshots resurfaced. My story got linked again. And his image, so carefully curated, started to unravel. That's when he messaged me. Blocked number. New email. Same old tone. He said he wanted to meet. Just for closure. Said he was in therapy now. That he'd like to apologize in person. I considered ignoring it. But then I thought, no. He needs to see me. Needs to hear the words I'd never spoken aloud. Not through texts. Not through lawyers. Not through online posts. So I said yes. We met at a coffee shop. Neutral ground. Middle of the day. He looked different. Older. Thinner. A little unsure. That part surprised me. What didn't surprise me? The way he tried to act familiar, like nothing had happened, like we were just two people catching up after a rough patch. I let him talk first, listened to his vague apologies, his carefully chosen phrases. I wasn't in a good place. I didn't know how to handle the pain. I thought I was doing what was best for both of us. And when he finally stopped, waiting for my approval, I gave him none. I just said calmly, "You left me in a hospital room and announced our divorce to strangers." While I was holding your mother's hand, his face twitched. I wasn't trying to... I held up a hand. Number, don't defend it. I'm not here for you to rewrite it. He looked down, couldn't meet my eyes anymore. "I'm not angry," I said. "Not anymore. I've done too much healing to waste it on hate. But don't pretend we both made mistakes. You didn't just leave me. You humiliated me. And I survived anyway." I stood up, grabbed my bag. And the best part? You don't get to be part of what comes next. I left him there, in that little coffee shop, sitting in his guilt like a suit he couldn't take off. And I didn't look back. And I was just getting started. Do you want to see how this ends? Subscribe now, because what comes next is everything. After that coffee shop meeting, I felt lighter. Not because I got some grand apology, I didn't, but because I didn't need one anymore. I had said what needed to be said, not for him, but for me. And I walked away, knowing he heard it, felt it. That truth, delivered calmly without screaming or drama, hit harder than anything else I could have done. But that wasn't the end, because soon after, my story was everywhere. It started with a local journalist who reached out. She'd seen the viral post, the project I was building with Last Light, and asked if I'd be willing to talk. "Not just about your ex," she said. "About caregiving, about grief, about how women are expected to carry everything and still smile." So I did. The article went live 2 weeks later. It wasn't dramatic or scandalous, just honest, raw. It talked about holding a woman's hand while the world watched me get humiliated. It talked about choosing dignity when I had every reason to rage. It talked about how easy it is for people, especially men, to rewrite history when you stay quiet. But I didn't stay quiet anymore. That piece blew up, syndicated, shared, discussed on podcasts and panels. Women messaged me by the hundreds, nurses, wives, daughters. People who had been there, in some version of that hospital room, carrying someone else's pain while being ignored, silenced, erased. And just like that, his version of the story cracked. He couldn't hide behind his posts anymore, his carefully edited captions, the sympathy-seeking videos. They started to look hollow, self-serving. And it wasn't just me talking anymore, it was everyone else. Even people who had once congratulated him were now questioning him. Screenshots circulated. That old Instagram post, the one that started it all, got reposted again and again. But this time, with context, with commentary, with receipts. He tried to do damage control. Another video. A comment turned off. A pause on social media. It was too late. Because the thing about public betrayal is, it doesn't just live in memory. It lives online. And online, nothing dies quietly. And the people who had once judged me, they started apologizing. I had no idea. I was wrong about you. I'm so sorry I ever believed him. But I didn't need their validation anymore. That was the true revenge. His mother once told me, people always show you who they are. It's your job to decide if you believe them. He showed me, over and over. And now the world saw it too. I was invited to speak at an event, an entire room filled with women who had rebuilt themselves after being torn down. CEOs, authors, caregivers, survivors. I stood at that podium, took a deep breath, and told them the story. Not of a failed marriage, but of a woman who got up off the floor. I ended with this. You can hold someone's hand as they take their last breath, and still be stabbed in the back by the person who should have been holding yours. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you dangerous. Because if you can survive that, you can survive anything. The applause wasn't for revenge. It was for resilience. And then, quietly, the final piece fell into place. I got a message from a woman I didn't know. She said she was the other woman. The one in the photo. She was no longer with him. Said he had lied to her too. Said she left the moment she saw the kind of man he really was. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That message wasn't for me, it was for her. The cycle ending. The reckoning arriving. I didn't scream. I didn't fight dirty. I didn't expose him with some dramatic confession video. I just told the truth. Lived it out loud. And let people draw their own conclusions. And in the end, that's what destroyed his story. A year to the day since she passed, I returned to the cemetery. I brought white lilies, her favorite, and a folded letter I'd written the night before. The sky was overcast, soft gray clouds rolling low over the trees. There was a light breeze, like the world was still enough to listen. I knelt beside her grave and laid the flowers down. No cameras, no crowd, just me and her. I kept my promise, I whispered. I took care of myself. I told her about Last Light, how it was growing, how people were healing because of it. I told her about the letters I get from daughters and sons and caretakers. People who feel less alone now. I told her I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I deserved peace. And then I sat there, quietly, just breathing. It wasn't grief anymore. Not like before. It was something deeper. Gratitude, closure, strength. She had seen me for who I was when everyone else chose to believe the story he sold them. She gave me the final push I didn't know I needed. And now, I was living a life she'd be proud of. When I stood to leave, I didn't cry. I smiled, kissed my fingers, touched the headstone, and walked back to my car. That evening I lit a candle on the kitchen counter, the same scent she used to keep in her home, lavender and sage. My home now felt full, peaceful, and more mine than it had ever been. He still tries to reach out. Every few months, some new number, a vague email. I don't respond. He doesn't exist in my world anymore. His story ended with a caption. Mine didn't end at all. My revenge was never about destruction. It was about rising, about living so well that he becomes a footnote in a chapter I've already moved past. The woman he left in a hospital room became the woman the world stood up for. And more importantly, the woman who stood up for herself. And that's something no one can take from me. Not now. Not ever. What would you do in my situation? Drop a comment below. Someone out there might need your words more than you know.